out. Now, speaking of that, at number 2, there is a whole new skill tree called Relic. We don't know too much about it, but apparently unlocking these apparently alters cyberware that you already have, unlocking new skills for them, like say for new movement abilities or your mantis blades if you have them. And you're going to be unlocking this stuff with Relic points, which is something that you can earn in Dogtown. Sounds like something expansion worthy. I hope it is. But with that, finally, at number 1, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty and presumably the free update patch thing are both launching September 26th, 2023. Phantom Liberty is dropping for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. Yeah, that's right, this isn't launching on PS4 or Xbox One, which, yeah, sucks if you're still on last gen, but would it really run anyway? I don't know. As for PC, here are the minimum specs on screen here and the recommended, so take that for what you will. PC players, CD Projekt Red is making it easier to jump into as well. According to a developer that went on record with GameDeveloper.com, they said new or returning players will also be able to make a new character and load up the expansion to jump straight into the new story if they so choose. So think of it like The Witcher 3 and you have Blood and Wine and you can just jump into that or something like that. So there you have it. That's everything you need to know about like CD Projekt Red's weird secret reboot of Cyberpunk 2077. Stuff under the hood, stuff involving Phantom Liberty expansion, all that stuff. That's what we know right now. Read up on it if you want in the description down below. But if you like this video and you like talking about games with us every day, clicking the like button's all you got to do. It helps us very much. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
There's this game called BattleBit Remastered, and at first glance at the Steam page, you're probably not going to think a whole lot of it. Take a second look though, because this thing is absolutely blowing up on the charts. It's already sold over 1.8 million units in just 2 weeks, and the player count continues to trend upward. But what is it? Why is it so incredibly popular, seemingly out of nowhere? Well, the short answer is that it's Battlefield, but not made by EA, and for a lot of people, that's enough. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, we ask the question, what the hell is BattleBit? So, there's obviously more to the answer than that. While I'm sure that's enough to bring a lot of people in the door. It's mainly to peek their heads in and see what the hell's going on. So I'll go a little more in depth. Well, 12 minutes worth of in depth. Otherwise, I'm not really doing my job, am I? Everyone wants to love Battlefield. Even now, the scope of those games is awe-inspiring, but EA and DICE seem like they're going out of their way pretty much every time to make the experience of actually playing it as frustrating as possible. Battlefield 2042 was a disaster at release, and yeah, it's in a better state now. It's still not the game a lot of fans wanted. It's too far from the original formula, and it's missing a lot of key features that people have come to expect from the series. Seriously, it took until February this year for them to finally bring back classes. Even it's still awkwardly grafted onto the specialist system. It has gotten better, but it is too little too late. Most players have just moved on, and there's not really any proper Battlefield out there, so it was kind of the perfect time for a little scrappy indie to swoop in and steal the show from the big AAA publishers, who don't even have something that looks like what Battlefield is supposed to be on the horizon. So it's a three-man team of Sergeant Okidoki, Velasquez, one of those two, and the Liquid Horse, who decided to make the Battlefield game that they wanted to play. It looks like Battlefield crossed with Roblox, but believe me when I say this game is the real deal. It somehow manages to capture what makes Battlefield 3 and 4 so great while adding a few new features on its own. For anyone nostalgic for the feeling of the older games of this series, I'm gonna say right now, BattleBit Remastered is a must-buy. It's only $15, and even though it's in early access, it's got a ton of game modes, great maps, and great features. That's not to say the visuals are not going to take a little bit to get used to, but it just goes to show that a game doesn't need next-generation graphics to still be fun to play. You might be wondering, just like I did, why they called BattleBit Remastered. Well, that's because they actually originally put the game up on Steam Greenlight 6 years ago, and it was more of a hardcore simulation back then. Yes, they have been updating, improving, and playtesting the game for that long, and it didn't even start seeing any real jump in player counts until 2022, and it's just been basically snowballing from there. So, how does it actually play? Well, mostly like Battlefield. You pick a class, drop into a map with hundreds of other players, and fight over control points. Killing players lowers that team's tickets, and the team that runs out of tickets first loses. Because there's so many players, the maps themselves are massive, and to get around, you can use jeeps, APCs, ATVs, helicopters, tanks, the standard stuff, and they all control similarly to Battlefield. That means helicopters are going to take some getting used to for people who aren't used to it. Tilting the mouse to control the helicopter's pitch and yaw, it's going to lead to a few unnecessary crashes until you get the hang of it, but Battlefield players should feel right at home. If there's one thing I do really like about the helicopters in BattleBit, it's the zip line. You don't just have to jump out of a helicopter in this line. You can actually zip down to the ground or just hang off the rope like an action hero. It's one of those little features that isn't strictly necessary, but it's great. Vehicles in general can take a little getting used to if you're used to how forgiving they can be in other games. These things are pretty heavy and unwieldy and like to stick on things. They can be a little awkward to use until you get used to it, but I think the game does a pretty good job balancing how powerful vehicles are compared to infantry. They're good assists, but they don't dominate the game. The classes themselves are what you'd expect. Each team's split into squads with one leader who can issue commands and has access to some special deployables. There's Assault, Medic, Engineers, Support, and Recon. Assault's your frontline guy, Medics can heal, Engineers get a rocket launcher, Support can drop ammo boxes and have thicker armor, and Recon is your sniper. It's Battlefield, and it works. That is to say, you will be familiar with most things, but there are a few twists to the formula, like the Assault Sledgehammer, which can smash through walls, or how everyone starts with bandages that can be used to revive teammates. Death comes fast in this game, so making it so any class can revive somebody is a relief. The Medic's got a lot more bandages, as well as a first aid kit, while the regular classes tend to have about 3 to start out. As long as your team knows what they're doing, though, you can survive for quite a while. Another relief is there's no awkward downed mechanic in this game. Instead, your allies can just grab your body and pull it somewhere safer before attempting to revive, which works very well and keeps things fast-paced. Of course, it's likely you'll just immediately die again after being revived, but it's still worth a shot. You're probably going to die a lot in this game. It's Battlefield, and that means a lot of the deaths that just seem like they come out of nowhere. But respawning's nice and fast. Getting back to the action's super easy, and most likely if there's somebody else around, they'll probably revive you. If you're not used to it, it can be frustrating, but that's just how these games are. With so many players running around, it's kind of inevitable you get caught out in the open. It happens, and there are just as many moments where you'll get the drop on enemies as well. So it is very satisfying when you do it, to be fair. It's just that kind of game. Even though you're just one tiny cog in the machine, your actions can really matter, because everybody has the power to revive, and players can get into combat so quickly. The rare times when a clutch play swings the momentum of battle in your team's favor, it has a big impact, and that's something I appreciate about BattleBit. There's not a lot of downtime. Yeah, if you want, you can slowly trudge from one quarter of the map to the other on foot, but the game gives you so many options to get around fast, it's kind of rare that you run into the Battlefield 2042 problem spending half your time just trudging around the map. Spawning on teammates is extremely generous. As long as they're not literally shooting or getting shot, the game lets you respawn next to them. The gigantic battlefield's definitely the biggest draw, but the game has a robust selection of game modes as well. Outside of the big 254 player maps, there's slightly more manageable 128 player games and the more tactical 64 player games, but it actually doesn't stop there. It goes all the way down to 8 versus 8 and has game modes to match, like Team Deathmatch, Free For All. There's a lot of possible modes here and an impressive selection of maps. Like, there's over 20 in the game already, so there's a lot of variety. Just about every possible map type is here. There's tropical islands, a snowy valley, dense city environment, nuclear power plant. It's a lot. And with so many maps to choose from, it's enough to keep things from getting stale. There's already more maps in BattleBit than in Battlefield 2042. Come on in. They're not all the best or anything, but I haven't seen anything where certain maps feel completely unbalanced, at least not yet. There's even Levolution where you can destroy massive structures, and that greatly affects how the map's played, and it feels a lot better integrated in the gameplay in BattleBit. There's already so much stuff you can destroy in this game, so it feels natural to take down a cooling stack or knock over a lookout tower. You can't smash everything, but almost everything that matters can be knocked over. And for a game with such simplistic visuals, you'd think the gameplay'd be simple, but it's not. It has all of the FPS staples from all these types of games. You can aim down sights, you can crouch, go prone, lean around corners, mantle up ledges. It's fast, it's not extreme though, and it works well for the game it's trying to do. Shooting feels surprisingly good, and there are a lot of attachments you can put on weapons. Some guns definitely better than others. The Vector's a popular choice at the moment, but I managed to make do with the class starting weapons. They all feel just fine. One kind of odd feature I'm not so sure about is the reload system. Kind of feels like a holdover from the game's more hardcore beginnings, and it feels out of place with what the game is now. Instead of a bullet count, you got a few clips on your UI. That's all your ammo, and the ammo isn't shared automatically between clips. There's the standard slow reload, but you can also quickly reload pressing R twice. Then you drop the possibly partially used clip and get a new one faster. You can even press P to combine ammo into one clip. It's a lot. There's a lot going on here. I rarely ever felt like it got in the way of things, but I'm just not sure that it adds anything to the gameplay. It feels kind of gimmicky and otherwise pretty cohesive package. There's parts of it that still feel like early access, like the tutorial, very, very bare bones. You're pretty much forced to learn on the fly while playing. Not that that's a bad thing. Other weird kind of early access feeling thing. There's night variants of maps that have players use night vision to see in the dark. I've never managed to get a game on them though, and certain environments are a little too empty. Some people might not love the weapon unlock system either. There's no battle pass or daily missions or anything like that, thankfully. It is a simple experience track that unlocks equipment as you rank up, but it's still one of those things that puts new players at a disadvantage. There are a lot of ways to get experience though, so as far as these things go, it's about as harmless as you could want. Another thing a lot of people complain about, but I'm not sure is actually a problem, is mines. Everyone gets them as a secondary, like new players get AP mines when you level up, and you could eventually unlock claymores. As defensive tools, they're obviously great, but having almost every character get 3 of them every time they respawn feels like it could be overkill. Like, they are kind of all over the place. If you know to look for them, they're not as big a deal, but having to constantly check your corners for mines does get a little old. Like classic Battlefield, what makes the game great are the memorable moments, the desperate last stands where you somehow manage to survive, or the moments of real teamwork. Just being part of a massive attack with helicopters, jeeps, tanks, it feels great. And the best of all, I experienced literally no server issues. Clearly the devs were pretty serious about the netcode, and it really paid off, because my experience with the game was smooth. Like, not indie game smooth, like very smooth. It looks like an indie game, and the sound design is clearly inferior to anything in the Battlefield series, which is, of course, still best in class when it comes to sound in FPS games, but those are relatively minor issues compared to how good the gameplay is. The whole thing feels like a labor of love. These guys know what made older Battlefield games feel so satisfying, and they didn't just copy it, they managed to make some smart changes on top of that. Visually, not gonna wow anybody, but the simple visuals make everything extremely easy to read and see. Also, they have motion blur turned off by default, so these guys clearly get it. With all that said, BattleBit Remastered is basically Battlefield crossed with Roblox. There's just not any getting around that, but that's so much less good than saying the words Battlefield crossed with Roblox implies. Three guys managed to do what one of the biggest publishers in the industry couldn't: make Battlefield relevant, fun, and as good as it's ever been once again. All they had to do was make a fun game. Weird. It's really not that hard, EA. You got all the money, you got hundreds of people on any team at any given time. Why do these guys do it when you can't? They're three guys. Seriously, there's a reason why they've sold 1.8 million units of a $15 Battlefield knockoff. Three guys. And I don't want to end this on a for shame EA, you suck EA. I want to end saying, good job, guys. Seriously, well done. You have impressed everyone, and all the Battlefield fans out there are going to be very thankful. I hope everything continues to grow and do well for you guys. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconHero, and we'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks.
Sometimes there's things in games that are kind of forgettable, but sometimes you need such a big old brain it's impossible to forget. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 1000 IQ video game moments we never forgot. Before we get going, I just wanted to note a little chicken and egg situation this brings up. Maybe a falcon in the egg, I don't know. Are we remembering these things because they were so tricky that it was notable the amount of effort that needed to be done in order to get through them? Or is it that our brains are so big that we cannot forget? The second would certainly be preferable. It would feel a lot better. But without actually going through these games, we'll never know. So without further ado, starting off at number 10, the keypad puzzle from Batman Arkham Knight. Now, the Arkham games actually have their fair share of tricky puzzles. Some of the Riddler challenges are no joke whatsoever. They're riddles. Ha! Get it? Riddles are not the same thing as a joke. Yeah, but if I had to pick just one puzzle in these games to make me feel like a genius for figuring it out, it's this one. It's actually not that hard. The solution's fairly obvious, but it's one of those ones that's just really satisfying to solve. And that's kind of a rare thing when it comes to puzzles and games. The basic gist of it is that you're trying to find the code to get into the studio using the camera system.
This lock is mechanical with no digital components. I won't be able to use the remote hacking device.
Normally, all you would really have to do is zoom in on the guy putting in the code and then just copy it. But the guy thinks he's clever and he blocks the camera's view so you don't see the code. You're screwed, right? No, because there happens to be a mirror right beside the door, which you can look at and see a reflection of what he's doing. That alone, pretty clever. But then once you remember to mirror his inputs, because you're seeing it through a mirror, those extra steps really make you feel like the world's greatest detective. Dressing like a bat is only half the equation, and although this isn't the hardest, and in some ways it's actually pretty obvious, it's also one of the ones that does snag some people. Yeah, but it's also number 10, so it's only uphill from here.
This is taking too long.
Brute force works too, I guess.
And number 9 is the Fool's Idol secret in Demon's Souls, the first Souls-like, had a fascination with trick bosses. Most of the boss fights in this game aren't real fights like you've come to expect from the series. There's often just some kind of trick or gimmick to them. Most memorable is the Fool's Idol, which is the boss of World 3-1. When you enter the area, this thing descends from the sky and fights you like a standard boss, but for whatever reason, it's like impossible to kill. There's nothing you can do. Seriously, if you just enter the boss arena, she's going to revive endlessly. There is a way to defeat this boss, but you have to think outside the box. Overlooking the church, you can find this random guy who tells you to buzz off if you get close to him.
What do you want? I am a humble servant. I do not wish to interfere. I won't cause you trouble. I won't.
But it looks like he's channeling some kind of ritual or something. There's no prompt or anything on what you're supposed to do here, and he kind of just seems like a basic NPC. But if you want to kill the Fool's Idol, you're going to have to take care of this guy. So it means you just have to attack him totally unprovoked, which means you're basically breaking two basic game design tenets. That you're not supposed to just attack NPCs, and that the solution to a boss fight can actually happen outside the arena. The biggest clue is the name. Fool's Idol implies there's some kind of illusion going on, and the guy up on the balcony is the man behind the curtain. You deal with him, the illusion breaks. It's a puzzle that's equal parts brilliant and maddening. And number 8 is Mass Effect 2, completing the suicide mission without anyone dying. When you think about it, the final mission of Mass Effect 2 is basically just one big puzzle. It's all about figuring out what characters to use and when to get the best outcome. It's not random or inexplicable. Most of the time, there's a logic to how characters live or die, and, well, your choices generally make sense with how they correlate with outcome. Most of the choices, like completing everyone's loyalty missions and getting the ship upgraded, make perfect sense. But then once you're actually in the middle of the suicide mission, some of the choices start getting more dicey. For example, the part where you need somebody to generate a force field. There's a lot of biotic-focused characters.
I wouldn't be able to protect everyone, but we might be able to get a small team through if they stayed close.
I could do it too. In theory, any biotic could handle it. Shepard, who do you want to maintain the field?
But you want to use the ones that are considered the best, like Mordin is a doctor, not a fighter, so you don't want to leave him to hold the line, because he's gonna probably die. I mean, he kind of does that spin-off of the modern Major General song, the Scientist Solarian thing.
I am the very model of a scientist Solarian. I've studied species Turian, Asari, and Batarian.
That's not somebody who survives that kind of situation. And there's often multiple good choices, but during the final mission, a good choice often isn't good enough. You need to make the best choice. There's a ton of possibilities here, and while it's not exactly what most people think of as a traditional puzzle, it requires some pretty serious mental calculus to figure out the best possible outcomes. And if you don't treat it like a puzzle, like a serious problem to solve, mentally speaking, you're probably not going to have everybody come back out with you.
Grunt's group just arrived, Shepard. No casualties.
Excellent. Now let's make it count.
And number 7, recovering the Master Sword in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. One of the central mysteries in this game is where is Princess Zelda? And depending on how somebody plays the game, it's something they discover right at the start, or it takes dozens of hours to figure it out. It's sort of a puzzle on its own, because the game never straight up tells you where Zelda is. The best you'll get is someone pinpointing where the Master Sword is, so it just so happens to be the same spot Zelda is in. And for some reason it's moving.
I'm going to spoiler warn you here just cuz. If you haven't played it, it could be a big one, potentially. So skip a little bit if you don't want something from Zelda spoiled. It's a relatively new game, so obviously it's a courteous thing for me to do here. So there's a big eureka moment that comes for a lot of people. They figure out Zelda changed into a dragon, and then figure out that she's kind of just flying around Hyrule, and you can get to her at pretty much any time. Like, as long as you're lucky enough to see her and have a way up, you can find Zelda and recover the Master Sword at any point in the game, assuming you meet the stamina requirement.
What's interesting here is you're probably going to feel smart no matter what. For the people who took a long time to find it, the clues finally come together and make it clear what your goal actually is. Where people who notice there's a new dragon flying around and try to reach it are rewarded for their curiosity by getting the Master Sword much earlier than intended. In any other game, this wouldn't be something to realize. It would be a story event that happens no matter what. The way you have to kind of put 2 and 2 together, even though they've given you both 2s, it's still clever and unique. And it does make you feel like a genius. And number 6, all the clues coming together in the return of Orba Din. An extremely unusual puzzle game, and it feels like you're just guessing at first until it just suddenly hits you just how much information the game is actually giving you. Your goal here is to explore a doomed ship. You experience moments in history and identify all the crewmen and their cause of death. It's a detective game in every sense of the word, but there's one curious difference. There's no notes. It seems like the game's giving you nothing to go on, especially if you're used to games that carefully celebrate puzzle elements from story elements, but here they're one and the same. Take, for example, the identities and fates of the